Good afternoon and good evening. Welcome to Pact's Adoption Orientation. My name is Katie Winan. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the adoption social worker and LGBTQ advocate for Pact and Adoption Alliance. I first learned about Pact in maybe 2010, 2011, when I realized I would be moving from Boston to Oakland. And my internship program at the time told me all about Pact, and I came out and learned more about it. Did my very first Pact camp at 2012, and then came on to staff 10 years ago in May 2013. I have predominantly been within placement, so I've seen the trends of adoption within the last 10 years, both for Pact and for agencies across the country. Let's see, I come to this work personally. I'm a transracial international adoptee, born in Bogota, Colombia, adopted by cis-het white Episcopalian parents, mother and father, raised on the East Coast, lived in New England for 10 years, and I've been out here in Oakland for about 12 years. So we are going to go ahead and get started. If you feel like it, if you want to drop into the chat where you live, your family makeup, how long you've been waiting, are you just getting started? Please do feel free to drop that into the chat. There will be points throughout where I stop for any questions, so you can hold on to them, you can drop them in now, and I'll get to them at different points. And I also hope I cover a lot where you're like, oh, my question got answered. But as always, there will be time for any of that comes up. So adopting with Pact, the format of this orientation is going to be kind of an overall view of adoption and what I want you to think about as you're coming to this lifelong journey, because that's what it is. And then I'll go into specifically why Pact, why we think you should work with us, why people come to work with us specifically. And then I'll go into specifics about our placement program, including fees, the cost. Everybody always has that question. We will be talking about open adoption. Everybody always has those questions, and those sort of things. So who is Pact? Who are we? We like to call ourselves a different kind of adoption organization. We are a nonprofit, full-service adoption agency licensed in the state of California. We work within domestic infant adoption only. Our services are child-centered, anti-racist, and ethical. We always keep the child at the center of our work and thinking, what would be best for this child if they go into an adoption placement? We are working to decenter whiteness in adoption. The image, the stories, the celebrities often highlighted are white adoptive parents raising kids of color. There are white parents raising white kids. There are Black parents raising Black kids through adoption, and so on and so forth. We focus and our specialty, I guess, we're pretty unique in that our focus is working with families of color for same-race placements, and we'll talk about what that looks like. We have a pretty extensive and nationally recognized transracial adoption education program that we've been offering for years. A lot of families, white families that are considering adoption will often come to us for a lot of that education as well. And we also have extensive post-placement services. We're not an agency that focuses just on placement, or family separation is a term that you might hear. We do have placement. It's about 25% of what we do. And then we have support groups, phone calls, webinars, a camp, youth clubs, support groups for adoptive parents of color, white adoptive parents, adult adoptees of color, former foster youth, first family members, parents parenting teenagers, parents parenting young adult adoptees. So we have extensive post-placement services because this is not a journey that ends once a baby goes home. That's actually the beginning. So we make sure to have a lot of ongoing support. And here's a snippet of those different programs that I mentioned: youth club, adoptive parents of color, first family, camp, education, community. I will say it throughout the webinar, but these are also available to anybody who does not adopt through us. You don't have to have a placement through Pact to access everything that we offer. So some terminology to get us started, which I kind of touched upon already. Same-race adoption is when one or both of the adoptive parents is going to share the race of the baby. The majority of our placements are same race. We believe that same-race placements serve children best, right? Child-centered. What is going to serve them? What is going to alleviate some of the experiences of adoption? They don't force the child to always have their adoptive status right in the public eye. The child is raised with parents who know and understand the BIPOC, that is Black, Indigenous, and people of color experience. They know what the kid is going to hear, what the kid is going to experience, as they have pretty much or often experienced it themselves as well. Then there's transracial and or interracial adoptions. There is a movement within the adoptee community to switch to the term, we're an interracial family. The term transracial, a lot of them feel like lines up very closely with transgender or trans-identified. And a lot of adoptees are saying, I didn't transition anything about my identity. I just came into my family and made it an interracial family. So I often say adoptee preference on what they want to use, but you will hear these terms interchangeable throughout. Most transracial or interracial adoptions involve white adoptive parents adopting children of color. Families adopting across racial lines, they need additional awareness, education, and support, and Pact can help with that, the program I mentioned earlier. We believe transracial placements can work when parents learn to address their privilege and are actively working to be anti-racist. And we are not currently working with any white families within our placement program. There is a high chance that white families in our program will also not be chosen. And further along in this orientation, you'll hear why that is. A lot of our post-placement support and services are very heavily attended by white families within transracial or interracial adoptions. They get a lot of support groups, a lot of education, and then a lot of our youth are coming together, and a majority of them are kids of color raised by white parents. So choosing your agency and professional. Obviously, if we feel like the right fit, I always advocate for people to come to work at Pact. And if we are not what you're looking for, you have every right to be shopping around, basically. Go to orientations, listen to what these agencies are saying. We are different. I actually would encourage you to go to other agency orientations because you might be like, that's not what Katie said. Or you might be saying, that's not what that agency said. And now Katie's saying it this way. Get all the information before you embark on this lifelong journey. Start with that info session or consultation. Some have something like this. Some have, hey, call us for a free 15-minute or 30-minute consultation with one of our workers. Get to know one another. This is somebody that's going to be coming into your home, interviewing you, getting information about you, background information, current information, pretty intense and intrusive things, as we've been told over the years. Also important, again, to ensure that this is child-centered and we're finding safe families. And you want to get to know the people that you're going to be working with for a length of time. Do they meet your goals and your needs in this adoption process? How do they work with you? Ask how they support and work with expectant parents. What is their stance on family preservation? What is their stance on, hey, if this person can parent, let's figure out how to support them? Or are they saying, oh, you're thinking about adoption? Absolutely, that's the best decision you can make. Here's all the info. You want to find out how they are working with pregnant people who are coming for counseling, coming with questions. How are they treating them? Ask about adoption costs and fees. Ask about everything. I take a couple phone calls every year from people with other professionals that tell me, they didn't tell me about this, they didn't tell me about this, and then all of a sudden I have an extra $15,000, an extra $7,000, an extra whatever $1,000 of things that were not clearly stated. So you definitely want to ask about that. What post-placement support and services are available to birth and first family, adoptees, and adoptive parents? I covered what Pact offers. At other orientations that you go to, find out what they have. Do they have a once-a-year annual picnic? Do they have similar things that Pact has? Do they have nothing? Do they just do placement and then that's it? And education requirements, especially if you're looking into a transracial adoption, what are they asking you to do? Are they asking you to watch a 30-minute video? That's not enough. Are they asking you to do a half-day workshop training? That's not enough. Is Pact asking you to do our training? It's still not enough. It's going to be ongoing, but PACS is more extensive, longer, a couple months, a longer process. There are some agencies that just say, watch this 30-minute video or come to this 5-hour thing and you're good to go. You can adopt a kid of color. I could go on more about that, but I'll just promote attending any adoptee-led panel or webinar specifically those in transracial adoptions, to learn about the experience and then think, you know what, maybe a half-day training is not what we need. We need something more, something significant. Education, education, what are they providing and giving to you? I also want to talk about adoption misconceptions. I'd say this has been compiled over my 10 years of doing this work and the things that I've heard when people call. I'll repeat again that this is also my personal experience. I also lead a support group for adult adoptees of color. We're coming up on our 9th year of meeting. And I've been working with adoptees of all ages, age 3 up to 75, since about 2005. So all these things that I've heard, and then I've heard from those with lived experience, and I'm like, we got to break some of these misconceptions that are out there. So many children need homes. This is not a misconception, but it is a misconception within private infant placement, which is what Pact does. This statement refers to the foster care system, the foster care resource family agencies across the country. Whenever you hear somebody say, oh, so many kids need homes, you need to go adopt, we are talking about the foster care system where over 400,000 kids across the country are waiting for permanency. Within private infant baby placements, there's, for lack of a better word, there's not enough supply for the demand. You're actually not totally needed within infant placement. You're very much needed within foster care. That's where, if that's your like, I want to give a kid a home, I encourage you to look into foster care, because that's where that statement is really applicable, not totally applicable to Pact's statement and Pact's mission. And we also recognize that we need to be ready, because we don't know who's going to call us and who's going to say, I can't parent this baby, I need a family. But that specific first quote is much more applicable to the foster care system. There's always that comment of, oh, you can't have a baby, just adopt, just go adopt. It makes it sound like it's really easy. It makes it sound like you're entitled to somebody else's child, and you are not. It makes it sound like there's not a lot of layers to it. It makes oh, you're not in a good mood, just go on a hike. Oh, you're not in a good mood, just get some ice cream. Oh, you can't have a baby, just adopt. No, 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 no. If I've heard anything from adoptees, we really hate that comment of like, oh, just go adopt. It's not, it's a lot more than that. Love will be enough, a big misconception. It's important and it's needed. And there needs to be more than love. There needs to be dialogue around, why did this adoption happen? There needs to be dialogue around the trauma impact, which falls into the next statement. There needs to be dialogue around the reasons for placement, the reasons for an open adoption or a not open adoption. You need love, but you also need more. I have a lot of families who call and say, oh, well, we thought about foster care. We know kids need homes, but they're all traumatized and we can't handle that. We're already parenting a child by birth, and it's going to impact our kid if we have a 1-year-old from foster care or a 5-year-old from foster care. Infant placement does not decrease the trauma impact. There has been that significant loss, the significant severing of what that infant knew for hopefully 9 months or like 6.5 up to 9 months, right? Everything they knew, everything their system knew, the sounds, the smells, the vibrations, the rhythms, their birth parents' voice and any other family members that were around them, all of that is shattered and is completely different within sometimes 6 hours of birth, sometimes a week, a couple months, and more and more and more research has been proven that babies know, the body knows, the body keeps the score, the body remembers. Infant, right, straight out of the birth canal into the adoptive parent's hands. Yes, that's ideal. Straight to somebody's chest. Yes, that's ideal. And that little system, everything they knew, everything, this is what they only knew. And then it suddenly is completely different, right? So I was rolling around in my birth mother's belly on the streets of Bogota, Colombia, hearing, feeling the rhythm, the smells, the sounds, the different language, the everything about Colombia. And then I went to, I've started to say, I went to classical music and cabbage. I just went to quiet, which is important, right, for attachment. But I was not hearing what I'd been hearing for 9 months. I was not smelling. I was not seeing. I was seeing faces that didn't look nothing like me. All the rhythm and vibration that my body knew just got jolted, and that carries on. So infant placement does not decrease the trauma impact. Can it be mitigated if at infant placement? Yes, and there's that body, that adoptee, youth, child, teen, young adult, that body's still going to remember, and there are going to be things that come up. Ooh, all babies are drug exposed. A lot of people are like, we don't want any drugs. We want a baby with no drugs. We do need to remind you that adoption is not often something that is planned. There might be like 0.1% of people that are like, you know what? I'm going to get pregnant and place my baby with someone else. It's a very low percentage. Everybody else is, I am living my life. I am doing what I want to do. I am going to brunch to have my mimosas. I'm going to go smoke or do whatever substances I use. And then whoops, I'm pregnant. Is there a likelihood of exposure to something? Yes. And not all babies are drug exposed. What we most commonly see is cigarette and marijuana use. And in the last couple of years, we have seen an increase in opiate use. We've placed babies with cocaine and crack exposure, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But all babies are not drug exposed. Some of the babies we placed in the last couple of years, nothing, absolutely nothing. Didn't need to go to NICU, didn't need to go anywhere, no specialists, totally healthy, high APGAR scores. Not all babies are drug exposed. Broken adoptions, a lot of people will go around and say this word of, oh, well, we were matched with somebody and then the adoption was broken. Baby was not born yet, but the adoption was broken. That's a broken match, right? The words actually matter. An adoption is not an adoption until there's been paperwork, termination of parental rights, a court finalization date, that sort of thing. It is a broken match. We like to emphasize this because then people are like, oh, well, all these broken adoptions happen. No, it's a broken match because the family wanted to parent their child. I also ask you to think about that. A lot of people say, oh, then the mother broke the match or broke the adoption because she wanted to keep her kid. Listen back to what you just said, her kid. That is not your child yet. Parental rights have not been terminated. It's a broken match. Is it going to hurt? Yes. Are you going to have a lot of emotions? Are you going to need support? Most likely. And you did not have a full adoption that was broken. That's not actually common. It's more broken matches, or it's just the parent chose to parent, right? You can even take away, oh, we had a broken match, we had a broken adoption. You can just say, we were selected by somebody who was considering adoption, and then they realized that they wanted to parent. Best interest of the child is to stay with their first family. And then adoption is a beautiful thing. Yes, and that's what we like to just have a lot of people think about. Yes, and adoption is beautiful, can be necessary for some situations, and it's a loss, it's a trauma, it's different, it's not better. That's somewhere else in here. A lot of people say, oh, adoption, you have such a better life. Adoption is such a better life. Adoption is a different life. We don't know. I don't know what my life in Bogota could have looked like. Possibly struggle, yes, because my birth parent was young and lived in poverty. And I don't know. It could have been different. My life here is very different than what it would have been in Colombia as well. So adoption is a beautiful thing, and it's complicated, and it's loss, and it's connection, and it's family. Just thinking about different ways you can think about adoption as you come into this process, because it's all going to be very important to the child that you might adopt. So why Pact? Why should you work with us? If you weren't totally paying attention, or if you didn't already receive the message, we serve adopted children of color by providing not only adoptive placement, but lifelong education, support, and community for adoptees and their families, both birth and adoptive, on matters of adoption and race. So you can come to us and do the placement program start to finish, and then our door remains open to you when, oh my gosh, my 5-year-old came home and wanted to know why is there no baby in my tummy, because their best friend's parent has a baby in their tummy. We have a support call for that. We have a webinar for that. Children are always at the center of our work. We talk about it as a placement team. We're struggling. Wait, come back, put the child at the center. What is going to be the best thing for them? Ethics, transparency, and honesty are always at the forefront of our work and our approach. Our placement team is comprised of a first parent, adoptees, and an adoptive parent. So the three of us are all individuals with lived experience. We are 40 and older. So yes, we're from a different generation, and we've been in this work, and we are working with placement now and youth and adoptees of all ages. So we've seen it for the last 40 something years that we've all been in this, and we bring personal experience as well. We address the intersections of race and adoption. We have strong emphasis on preparing families for adoption and supporting families after. We offer real options counseling. I capitalize and emphasize real because some agencies that you go to will talk about adoption only, or maybe adoption and parenting. And you'll see the order that we go in when somebody calls us for counseling. We emphasize and talk about love not being enough. And we do get a lot of pushback of like, but we want the positives. We want to hear all the positive stories. We want to know the positive things. Yes, we can share that. And we'd rather prepare you for the stuff that will very likely, I could wager my property, come up for you on this journey and as your kid or kids grow up. We also recognize that we are not for everybody, and that is okay with us. Again, children are our center and the focus of our work. If people don't like how we talk about things or the education we make them do, that's okay. We're not for everyone, and that is okay. Remember, I said, find the agency that is going to serve your needs and what you're looking for. We also focus on supporting underserved adoptive families, specifically adoptive parents of color. The adoption world is dominated pretty much by white parents, single and two-parent families coming to adopt. You can Google any agency in the country. A lot of us have websites where you can go on and see what the waiting families look like. We only have 7 right now, which I'll talk about, but they are all families of color or families with at least one parent of color. You can go on to other agency websites, and it's going to be about 75 white families and maybe 20 families of color, or 20 families with one parent of color or a single parent of color. So our focus is serving underserved. We routinely work with LGBTQ and queer identified families, both two-parent and single-parent homes, and we work with single parents to adopt. Okay, going more into the specifics of our program. And again, there will be a question moment coming up shortly. So our parameters, our specific parameters to be in our program is open adoption. All families coming to this program need to be ready for open adoption. If you're sitting on the other end of this screen and you're like, nope, totally closed, we don't want anything, none of that, we are not the right program for you. If you're like, yes, I read everything and I follow adoptee Twitter and adoptee TikTok, and I know that open adoption is the answer to it all, I'm doing it, great. And we'll talk more about that. And you might be more in the very common zone of open adoption scares me a little bit. I have some questions, I have some fears, and I'm understanding that it's in the best interest of the child. Is Pact going to support me on that? We absolutely are. And we require that everybody who comes into our program is ready for open adoption. That will include in-person visits without Pact present, just you and the birth first family, whatever members are involved. We do have an age requirement, no older than 48 at time of placement. If you are a two-parent family and there's an older parent, that parent can be no older than 55. So I actually have a family that is falling into this right now. One of them is early 40s, one of them is late 40s. And then interestingly enough, when the older one turns 55, the younger one turns 48. So they're actually aging out like right at the same time. They have a couple years, they have about 7 years to be in our program. And we'll talk about length of time, but we do have that age requirement. You will, if you explore and connect with other agencies, a majority of agencies across the country have a cutoff at 45. There are some that are 50 or 55. Within the foster care program, where the real need is, there tends to not be an age parameter. I don't really think they're going to give a newborn to a 76-year-old, but maybe a teenager, maybe a young teen, tween. But within foster care, there's not usually an age parameter. We do not allow gender selection within our program. So if you have your heart set on, I want this little girl to have tea time and ballet tutus and makeup and hair parties, babies are assigned a sex at birth, but we don't know what someone's gender identity or expression is going to be when they grow up. And we don't need you to put your wants onto this child, right? Because what if you get that little girl who does not want to do anything that you've imagined a little girl doing? Are you going to be upset? Are you going to take it out on that kid who already is like, who already might be thinking, I don't think I'm the kid that they wanted. So we don't allow you to come in and say, We only want a boy, we only want a girl. No gender selection. We do not have a marriage requirement. There will be some agencies across the country that want 2 years or more of marriage. We are not religiously affiliated, so we don't have any religious affiliation. On occasion, we work with expectant parents that are seeking specific religious families. I want them to be Muslim. I want them to be Christian. I want them to be Jewish. But it's not too common because since we're not religiously affiliated, we don't tend to pull in a lot of people that are specifically looking for that. And if you are, that's great, because I think there is a current possible placement coming up where the expectant parent is like, I am seeking a family that is currently active within their Christian faith. And Pact has at least 2 families of that right now. So that's great. They might be the right fit for this parent if they want to do a placement. And then we require ongoing education once in our program. There's education you have to do during your home study. And then when you're fully active waiting for a possible placement, we have additional education that is required. So coming to open adoption, which is what Pact focuses on, we believe it is child-centered and supports the child in the best way possible. So I have 2 slides about kind of what is it? What does Pact mean by open adoption? It is not co-parenting. I always get people coming to orientation. I don't want to co-parent. Nope, I don't want to co-parent. I don't want to do that. It's not co-parenting. What I also want you to remember and think about, please step away from the Lifetime movies. Even Little Fires Everywhere, that narrative and that piece of like the birth parent is going to come and snatch the kid in the middle of the night. What I need you to remember is that this person also just gave birth. Their body is responding to somebody that's not there anymore. They're going through their own grief process. They probably don't have the energy to hop into a car and go try to find their kid. That's the Hollywood thing that I need you to separate yourselves from. And in the many years I've done this, I have parents that admit, they're like, oh yeah, I watch a lot of Lifetime, so I definitely get scared. It's not co-parenting. You are the parent, you are making the decisions. The birth family, first family, their rights have been terminated, so they don't have legal right to like make these official parenting decisions. And maybe eventually down the line, depending on the relationship you do have, maybe you do involve the birth or first family with the decision. Hey, we're thinking about this school for Jay. We'd love your input as well. We know that public education was important to you, that sort of thing, but it is not co-parenting. It is direct contact between the adopting family and the birth family. And I added this in. Culturally, family blood connection within BIPOC communities, that is really strong, right? That's important. I did an adoptee panel a few weeks ago, and I have a Black same race adoptee on the panel. Their adoption was never talked about. They never really had open. Their adoptive parents totally were like those people talking about their birth family. Everybody involved was Black. And this Black adoptee said, it was really hard for me because within the Black culture and within the Black community, everybody's like blood, blood, blood. It takes a village. So then why is my family cutting off my blood? Why is my family cutting off part of my village? I'd say it's the same within Latinx communities, right? Like you are blood, the tias, the abuelas, like everybody comes in, everybody helps. It takes a village. So if you are a family of color coming into this, why are you then cutting off the blood connection, the extra support, the extra village? It is direct contact between you without Pact involved, and really think about what's in the best interest of the child. Birth family has questions that they can answer that we can't. You will also see an interplay of words like, oh, we want a semi-open adoption only, or we want a fully open adoption. Semi often means that you meet and exchange non-identifying info, and you may maintain contact through an intermediary. Fully is close and ongoing contact, which includes visits, no intermediary, no private address to send things to, just open, here's our address, here's where we meet. We're going to meet at this park today. Pact doesn't have to be there, or adoptions together doesn't have to be there. People will say semi or full. Pact, we don't use those terms. We just say open. This is an open adoption that has visits. If it doesn't have visits, our families are talking about it. And we'll talk more about that too. Open adoption looks different from family to family. There's no one way to have an open adoption at all. I've seen many now, and they are They are all very different. Open adoption does not solve, fix, cure, or ensure anything. I often have a lot of people come in and say, we're going to have open adoption. We're going to mitigate this trauma. The kid's going to be great. It's not going to solve everything. It will solve some problems, and then it will create new ones. You're going to have ebbs and flows. And I should probably switch this location, but who has a relationship that doesn't change, right? Your kid is not staying a baby forever. Your kid's birth parent is not going to be the same age they were at placement. That 22-year-old is soon going to be 42. So it's going to do this. It's going to do this. Majority of the expectant parents that Pact works with are seeking some level of openness. And even when we work with parents that come in that say, nope, I don't want any, we counsel and support them on, we hope you'll think about it. Are you open to at least this first? We give examples. We let them talk with other people who have placed children. We let them talk with other people who have parented children. Majority do come in wanting openness, and the some that are a little bit on the fence, we do our best, again, child-centered approach to talk to them about how it will benefit their child. Closed adoptions are not child-centered. All of our adoptions, as I've said, are some version of open. And within the state of California, there is a legal and binding post-adoption contact agreement, or also known as a PACA, and that's also within several other states. So it's like a whole other piece, but if the baby is born here in California and you live here in California, then we have you, obviously you finalize in California and you have that PACA. If you live in Kentucky, but the baby is born here in California, you can finalize in Kentucky or you can finalize in California. Pact is going to encourage you to finalize in California because that PACA will be able to go with the form. That's the one piece that a birth first family has, right? After they've given birth, chosen a family, placed their kid with another family, had their rights terminated, that PACA is the one thing that they can hold on to. It's a legal binding document that gets signed by everyone, hopefully, and then gets finalized with all the adoption paperwork. So if something happens, that first family can come back and say, hey, you're not upholding your agreement. And that's actually how it falls. It's a lot of time the adoptive parents are like, oh, they didn't call us for that 3-month visit. We're good. We're stopping these visits. And the birth family can come back and say, no, we had this agreement that said, I can come back at this time. We're going to do this no matter what, that sort of thing. And we advocate for PACA, open adoption, finalizing in a state that has one. It is not uniform across the country, unfortunately. Areas of possible challenge within our program, or maybe not challenge, but like, oh, this could add some time. This might make it a little bit harder, that sort of thing. What we typically like to tell families is it is a 2 to 4 year wait time from your point of activation. The majority of Pact placements have been under 2 years, with a few being just under the 4. We have also had people that are active and then bring a baby home 5 months later, 7 months later, 9. This point, we're going to orientations, we're having a consult, we're doing a home study, blah, blah, blah. That's in your control. And I've seen families do that in about 7 months, and I've seen families do that in 2 years. That's not the time period we're talking about. We're talking about home study is done, profile book is finished, you had a meeting with Pact or your other agency, and you're suddenly on somebody's website to bring a baby home. That's when that 2 to 4 year time period starts for you. That is a national average. I hear it from other agencies across the country. It's not just Pact. That's what we need you to prepare for. Could it be under 2 to 4 year? Absolutely. Could it be over? Yes. And I haven't seen it be over in the 10 years that I've worked within placement. Other areas, non-Bay Area families can face a longer wait time. Pact is located within the Bay Area of California. A lot of the pregnant people we support are here. They are searching for an open adoption that includes in-person visits. So they would prefer, oh, I live in Richmond. Is the family down in Union City? That's perfect. We can meet up in Oakland by the lake. As opposed to, I live in Richmond, California, but the family lives in Richmond, Virginia. I want to be able to see my kid twice a year. That's not going to work. So while we work with families across the country, if you do not live in the Bay Area, you could face a possible longer wait time. There's a situation right now that we're talking with. We showed families not from California, and then we found out that expectant parent would prefer a California family. The New York families in parentheses and asterisks, my apologies if any of you are on here, but I hope you did learn some stuff up to this point. We are not able to work with families within the state of New York for placement. Everything else we do, the Adoptive Parents of Color Collaborative, all of that is applicable to you. We just cannot work with you for placement. That's a New York state law that they only allow New York licensed agencies to work with their prospective adoptive parents. And we are only licensed in California. Other states don't have that requirement. So if you live outside of New York or outside of the Bay Area, you're still good to go. And you could face a longer wait time. For those that are parenting children already, specifically by birth, I'd say for me, this is actually feeling more like it's a 50-50 shot. There are expectant parents that are like, I don't care, just as long as they're local to me, or I don't care just as long as they're Black. I don't care just as long as they're Christian. They don't care. So if you're already parenting by birth, could be, but also might not be. And we have placed with families in the past that are currently parenting kids by birth. And we have the percentage of expectant parents that are like, I want my child to be the first, or I want to place with somebody who cannot have a child. Like they're not, or at least that we know of right now, because we know that that can happen later on down the road. But there are expectant parents that will come to Pact and say, this family, they can't have kids, infertile, 2 men, 2 women, like whatever. They can't have kids. That's who I want. I don't want to place with somebody who already can have a kid by birth. While we support and work with plenty of LGBTQ and queer identified families, there are still expectant parents who will come in and say, nope, it has to be a mother or a father, or a mother and a father. I will not place with queer families. Same with single parents. A lot of the times, the reasons people are coming to adoption placement is because they are a single parent themselves. So they might say, I'm a single parent, I don't want to do it. Why would I place with a single parent? I was raised by a single parent. I didn't like it. Why would I want to place with a single parent? And there could also be the reverse. I was raised by a single parent. It was great. I don't care if they're a single parent. And we have seen that single parents can wait a little longer. Your level of openness. So if you're open to in-person visits, but you say, I really only want 1 a year, we work with expectant parents who are looking for 4 to 6 visits a year, every other month or every quarter. So if you're saying only 2, then we're not going to present you to somebody who's looking for 4 to 6. We are also a small program. We typically, since I've been here, if we averaged it out, it's been about 2 to 4 placements a year, and sometimes none. In 2021, we did 0 adoption placements. We counseled a handful of expectant parents who were thinking about adoption, and they either chose to parent, terminated their pregnancy, or we never heard back from them. But we never did a physical, hi, we have a baby that you need to come pick up at the hospital, or hi, you've been chosen. 2021, we had no placements. 2022 was the exception. Pact did 7 adoption placements within 2022. It was wild. And like 5 of them took place within the span of about 8 weeks, all back to back. March and April of 2022 was kind of nonstop placements. We lost a majority of our waiting families. So we are small, and we had a lot of people adopt last year. And to date, April 2023, we have not done any placements. We're counseling people. We have people that have spoken with people that are considering adoption, but we haven't done a placement yet. This is not something that we control. So that the reason why that could be an area of challenge is we are a small program. We don't have a $500,000 advertising budget to try to find pregnant people. That's also not how we operate. We're not out here trying to put up Google ads, give us your baby and we'll give you an apartment. There are agencies like that out there. You can Google and you'll find them yourself. We don't do that. We're here for those in crisis. We're here for those that want a family of color, and we're going to counsel them first on all their options. And as we learned after 2021, that was 0 placements, and then 2022 came around, we have learned that we never know what type of family an expectant parent is seeking. This process cannot be predicted. And I'll say a little bit more about that when we get into other specifics. And I will pause for questions at this moment, and we still have about 45 minutes left. You can use the chat or the question and answer. And if there's nothing, I will continue, so I am mindful of time. And you can always drop them in and I'll come to them further on in. Okay. So our specifics from our program. Expectant and birth parents. A little note on language. We refer to somebody, and that's something else you should check with all the agencies that you're interviewing or checking out or Googling. We refer to somebody who's pregnant as an expectant parent. They have not signed any paperwork. They are considering their options. They're calling us and saying, I want to be a parent, but I don't know if this is the time yet. They're expecting a baby and they're just trying to figure out what to do with it. We do not use the term birth parent until they are legally a birth parent, which is when they sign the paperwork that terminates their rights. When they have given birth, I usually just call them mom or parent. I'm like, no, they're the parent because they haven't signed any paperwork yet. So if you're calling an agency and an agency says, oh yeah, well, we often, we talk with a lot of birth parents who are 4 months pregnant, or we talk with birth parents who are 7 months pregnant. That would be a pink flag for me, because nobody is a birth parent until they have legally signed paperwork and placed a child. It's also coercive to call somebody a birth parent when they're not. It puts unwanted pressure on somebody who's really just trying to get information to figure out what they're going to do. So we refer to everybody as an expectant parent. Unless they are a birth parent already. There are some birth parents who have placed, and then they're maybe coming around to do a second placement. Yes, they're a birth parent, but I would actually still call them mom or parent or expectant parent, even though they might already be one from another child that they placed. The age range we currently or typically see is about early 20s to mid 30s. In 2022, we did have late teens, 17, 18, 19, and I think 16. As well. But since I've been here, the majority range has been 20 to mid 30. Last year was the first time, really, maybe except one of the first placements that I helped facilitate when I started was a 17-year-old in high school. And then this past year was the first time I think I've really seen more high schoolers come through, but it tends to be 20s to mid 30s. Some are single parents already, 1, 2, or several other children, and they're just realizing, I really can't take on another kid. They may not be receiving prenatal care. As soon as they contact us, we get them in contact, or we get them connected to prenatal care and other services. There can be significant substance use. I did say not all babies are drug exposed. That is still correct. And there can be significant substance use. What we saw in 2022 was we had 2 babies born with opiate exposure. They were in NICU for a couple weeks. We have seen meth. We've seen crack and cocaine. Most commonly is marijuana. Alcohol. Since I've been here, there have been maybe 2 or 3 where there's been significant alcohol use. I think no matter where you live, what your education level is, what your access to information is, I think most people know what alcohol does to a baby. Again, adoption is not planned. So there are people, like I said, who are living their life, and the majority, if not all, except for the very few that I've seen since I've been here, will say, oh, well, I had a few mimosas early on, but as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I stopped alcohol. That's what we typically see. And we are also just trusting what they are fully disclosing. Unplanned pregnancy means stress. Denial is part of the process. How do you process denial in your own life? Do you maybe turn to substances? Do you maybe not do substances, but you do excessive exercising? Do you do excessive sleep and annoying things, right? Like not really taking care of yourself, whether it's with substances or not. So remembering a lot of these expectant parents went through joy or terror or excitement or concern, and then had to grapple with, do I want it? Do I not? What am I doing? What am I thinking? They're hoping to maintain or improve. Oh, the babies, I'll get to that. They're hoping to maintain / improve their life and that of their child. Social drinking, like I said, cigarette, marijuana is common. They are seeking families that will share their child's racial makeup. This in particular has been increasing since 2020. In 2021 was maybe the first time that I started taking phone calls where the expectant parents were saying Black families only. no white families, Black families only. The other years I've been here, people would say, I have a preference for this and I'll consider white families. But since 2021, it's a new generation that is pregnant. The world is at their fingertips. They survived COVID. They witnessed the murder of George Floyd. They witnessed the racial reckoning of this country. They are tapping into adoptee Twitter and knowing what's going on. So since 2021, a lot of the expectant parents that are calling us are saying, my race only, right? I am Guatemalan. I want Latinx parents. If they're Mexican and Venezuelan, cool. At least they're brown. At least they're Spanish, and I'll be able to speak to my kid and vice versa. I'm Vietnamese. This family is Thai and Laotian and Chinese. Like, great. At least my kid will be able to pass. And then this year we had somebody that the family had to be 2 Black parents or 1 Black parent, and then the other parent could not be white. So they were okay with Black and Filipino, Black and Latinx, Black and Asian, Black and multiracial, but they were not okay with 1 Black and 1 white. So we are seeing way more, and this is also nationwide, as I've learned from other agencies that I've talked to in the last 6 months, that they are getting way more calls about, I am a person of color, the adoptive family needs to be people of color as well. And then the specifics, like I said, they're seeking open adoptions that include in-person visits. So the 2 babies that were opiate exposed, the other thing that I want to chime in there is, so our focus is placing children of color or children born to white parents that are going to be biracial or multiracial. And we have also, in 2022, we placed 2 white infants. And those 2 white infants were the 2 that were opiate exposed. The babies of color we placed either had nothing in their system or had marijuana, and that's it. So also that narrative of, oh, well, these women of color are just using all these substances on their babies. In 2022, the people of color who had their babies exposed, it was marijuana, and that's it. The opiate babies were born to white birth parents with white partners. We had a family that was open to, a lot of my interracial couples that tend to have 1 white parent, 1 parent of color are open to white infants. And then in one situation, we went out of our program because our mission is to serve children of color. So we didn't have a white family that this expectant and eventually birth parent wanted. The reason why we got some of these white pregnant individuals to us is because the agencies or the hospitals or the social workers within the Bay, they know how Pact operates. They know how we do options counseling. We know that we treat the person as a full person and not just give us that baby because our families have been waiting. So we had social workers call us and say, I know you usually work with like people of color, but I trust you, Pact, to work with this person who's considering adoption. So that's what we did. And how hard or easy is it for the agency to meet the criteria of expectant mothers? For everybody, it's hard across the board, even for Pact, especially because a lot of people are coming in and saying, I want 2 Black parents. Pact only has 2 families that match that right now out of our 7. Other agencies don't have that. There's a lot of interracial couples. So we also have we have other agencies that call us because they don't have any families with at least 1 Black parent. Maybe they have Asian families, white families, and Latinx, but they don't tend to have a lot of Black families. So even for Pact, sometimes we can't meet what the expectant parent is looking for. What we do say is, well, this family meets some of what you're looking for, but like, this is who we have. If they're coming to us directly, we will also say, this is who we have. We know them. We've done their home study, or we talk to them every month. They're doing our education, but if that's not who you're looking for, we will try to find you someone else, right? And then we have to go outside of our program, which we prefer not to do, but to keep it child-centered and to support this expectant parent, we will go outside of our program if we have to. And do we find ourselves having to report to CPS any concerns for safety or danger? Yes, we have had to do that in the past, maybe just once. What we also, so my placement teammate is also on here. Susan, I don't know if you want to chime in on this either, but we often don't, we don't have anything to do kind of with foster care and CPS. When somebody is coming to us and they're pregnant and they might be in, like, on the fringes of This actually happened. 2018, there was a pregnant person, homeless, daily substance use, had 2 children removed by the foster care system previously. This birth parent was in their 30s now, a lot more education, a lot more awareness. So they actually reached out to like a homeless support network and said, I already lost 2 kids to the foster care system. I can't parent this 3rd one. I don't want to lose them to the system. I want to do private placement. So if somebody comes to us and is working on a plan with us, we're helping them, we're supporting them. We don't need to report them to CPS. If she had wanted to parent her kid, right? If she had given birth and said, no, you know what, Katie, I want to take my kid back to my homeless tent encampment, then I would need to do a CPS report. We did have an instance where somebody talked with us about possibly placing, then they decided not to. We did have to file a CPS report because of safety for the kids. And then actually that individual ended up coming back around to consider placement again. But it's not something that we typically need to do because people are coming to us still pregnant, asking for that support. And then those that give birth, like a sudden birth at the hospital where they think, oh my gosh, CPS might come in and take this kid. A lot of the social workers, especially if they've received some of our education, can sometimes talk to somebody and say, look, I know your kid might be lost in the foster care system. If you're thinking of wanting to parent, we can figure out how to support you. You can be on reunification track. If you know you don't want to parent, you know you're not going to be able to reunify. The homeless individual I worked with, she said to me, she's like, Katie, I've been homeless since I was 18. I'm a daily user. I know what the system is going to ask me to do. I'm not going to do it and I'm not going to be there. So I'm going to do this placement. So we've seen that happen as well. And then sometimes people that like, they know, they're like, I really want to parent this kid, but I know I'm going to lose them to the system. And I'm going to do an infant placement through Pact or through somebody else where I can choose the family. I can say the open adoption levels that I want. I will be able to see them and have visits, that sort of thing, if that answers your question. And then I think I said the last point on this one, seeking open adoptions that include in-person visits. I've covered some of this already on how we work with expectant parents. We do true options counseling, starting always with family preservation. Somebody calls and says, I'm 4 months pregnant, I'm 5, I'm 6, I'm 7. We always say, how can you parent this kid? Keep them within your family. Do you have extended family to support? Is there an extended family, kinship family member that can help keep this child intact with you or with any member of their first family? That's where we always start. Even with somebody who has just given birth at the hospital, they're holding their baby or their baby's in the nursery, we ask them, is there anybody in your family that can step forward and parent this kid so they don't have to go to another family? We provide information regarding family preservation, and if it is somebody still within the time frame, we talk with them about abortion or how or terminating their pregnancy. We connect them with resources if needed. We have connects with longer term abortion clinics here in California. So we also talk about that with them as well. Family preservation, kinship placement, termination. We assume parenting is possible with them if they're connected with the right resources. So we had somebody a couple years ago who said, all I need is a plane ticket to get home to my family in the Midwest, and then I'll be able to parent this kid. We connected them with resources, we supported them, we counseled them to get them that plane ticket home. Other agencies were encouraging them to place that child. All they needed was a $200-something plane ticket to get home to family. And they called us and told us that. They were like, all these other agencies are telling me to place. You're the only agency that's connecting me with somebody who will get me home to my family so I don't have to place. We deep dive into the reasons of why they're considering adoption. Are they just scared? Are they just overwhelmed? If they're early on, I think it's somewhere in there, no early matching, right? If somebody calls us, I just took a pregnancy test, I'm 12 weeks pregnant, I don't believe in terminating, I want to do a placement. We say, let's backpedal, let's give it some time. We have time. We try to dive into the different reasons, connect them with resources, educate them on all the different ways that they might be able to find support. We talk about adoption and parenting are different lives for the child, like I mentioned previously. We don't frame it as better or worse. And we involve, name, notify the father with every possible placement. We do everything in our power to get his name, whether he's known or not. If you attend other agencies, they might say, oh, we don't ask because then it's going to make the process more complicated when we get to signing paperwork. And we just want to make this streamlined for you, the adoptive parents. So we just, if she tells us she doesn't know who they are or who he is, we just keep it moving. Not at Pact. We ask everything we can. Again, child-centered. Every child adoptee human in this country is 50% one person, 50% the other, even though they might look 80% more like one of them. So we do everything we can to find out who the birth father is and notify him about his rights. Specifics for children. 2022 was an exception. Like I said, we placed 2 white babies, but typically more than 92% of the babies placed are Black, including biracial or multiracial. So they have at least one Black parent, and then the other parent is white or another person of color. About 4% of the babies placed are Latinx, tending to be more indigenous. So not white Latinx or white presenting Latinx, like indigenous, Central American, a lot of Guatemalan and Mexican, El Salvadorian, Honduran. And then about 2% are Asian, Pacific Islander, Native, other. That's East Asian, Southeast Asian. I've been here for 10 years. We've maybe placed 2 to 3 and counseled maybe 7 to 10 Asian identified people, not all of them place. The majority that we counsel are white, pregnant, expecting a biracial or multiracial child, Black, and or Latinx indigenous. About 80% are born healthy, no positive tox screen. We are looking for families for children, not children for families. So we're not letting you come in here to baby shop. You can't baby shop if you were able to have a child by birth. We ask you to think about if you had a child by birth, what would they be exposed to, or what would they genetically, like what's in their history? Because a lot of people come in and say, totally healthy, no mental health, no whatever. Look back into your family and what's the history there. If you had a child by birth, would they be predisposed to alcoholism, ADHD, depression, bipolar, things like that? And we are predominantly infant placement. We occasionally get calls about children maybe 9 months, 1 month, sometimes 2, 3, or 5-year-olds. A lot of the time, some of the older might be like severe medical things. The family has tried to parent and just, they really don't have the resources. They don't have the family. They don't have the access. So they're looking for families that really can take a child with significant medical or other known things. When we also do get calls from people that have a 10-month-old, a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, they're often freaking out. They're in a moment of panic and they're like, I can't take this kid. I'm going to give them to somebody else. We talk with them. We counsel them, we let them know what that loss and separation will look like for an older kid. And then they're often able to be like, yeah, I was just freaking out. Like, this is my kid. I'm not doing this placement. So we are predominantly infant placement, birth at the hospital, a few days, a few weeks. The oldest child we've placed was about 14, 15, 16 months old. Before that, it was 6 months old, but predominantly a few hours or a few days old. If you're open to older children, that's great. Call your local foster care or resource family agency. The specifics of adopting parents. 98, if not actually in the last couple of years, pretty much all of our placements are with at least same race families or families of color that might be adopting transracially. So that's 1 or 2 parents of color with similar racial, ethnic, or heritage to the child. We routinely work with couples, LGBTQ+, queer families, and singles, like we said. Transracial adopters have required extensive training as part of our process. And like we said in the beginning, and it is in all of our paperwork as well, white adopters specifically might never be chosen in our program. When an expectant parent comes to us and says, I don't care the race, I'll look at everybody, and then they see that everybody we have tends to be parents of color, right now it definitely is. The last time we had a white family in our program was maybe 2020, 2021. As soon as they find out that we have families of color, they're like, oh yeah, why would I place with a white family when I have families that look like me, that know my culture, that know my traditions? But transracial adopters, also non-white transracial adopters, because we have had that in our program, do have extensive training as part of our process. The pre-adoptive parents we work with generally range from 30 to 45 years old, and many in our program will be first-time parents. Like the family in this picture, they were first-time parents. Pact is currently recruiting families. As I said a little bit back a few slides, 2022 was an unprecedented year. We lost a majority of our families. At one point, I think we had only like 4 active families with only 1 in the Bay Area. Majority of our calls in 2022 came from the Bay Area. So we were freaking out. We were like, oh my gosh, if Alta Bates calls us, if Zuckerberg SFG calls us, we only have 1 Bay Area family we can present. We're still presenting everybody, but we only have 1 Bay Area. So we were freaking out. We currently have 7, still only a few in the Bay Area. So we are actively recruiting specifically Bay Area families. And as you'll see on the screen, 2-parent household, both parents Black, any gender or sexual orientation. Both parents Black is the type of family most currently sought by expectant parents and professionals contacting Pact. So across the board, Black pregnant people are seeking families with 2 Black parents. We are also in need of 2-parent household, both parents Latinx, Spanish speaking, any gender or sexual orientation. Also 2-parent household, both parents Asian, any gender, sexual orientation. If you are on here saying, but only 2% of the babies you place are Asian, yes, and real choice means having families ready for anybody who calls us, anybody who walks through our doors. I don't know who's going to call us. I don't know who's going to call our 24/7 phone. We don't know who's giving birth down the road at Highland Hospital right now. Real choice is having families that look like them or that's going to look like their kid. So we want to have Asian families in our program. Could it be a long wait time because it's a low percentage that we place? Yes. And my family that waited the shortest last year was a 2-parent queer Asian family. They waited about 5 months. They went active 5 months later. Their baby came home. So we never know. I never know. My coworker never, we don't know. And real choice means having families of all type available for people that are considering placement. We are also looking for families with at least 1 parent of color who is prepared to adopt older babies, ages 1 and up, babies with known moderate to severe prenatal exposure to substances such as opiates, methamphetamines, crack cocaine, or alcohol, and babies whose birth parents have known severe mental health issues such as schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, and bipolar disorder. We have been in situations in the last year or so where we've had no to very few families to present to expectant parents in these circumstances. That always feels really hard, right? We're here to support them. We want to show them that there are families out there, and we know there are families out there. We had a family adopt a baby that had severe medical needs that we're able to give more support. We have some families that are open to more severe exposure. The 2 babies that were exposed to opiates and went to the NICU for a few months, they went home to adoptive parents. So it does come up, and we often don't have a lot of families that are open to that. If you're somebody who is open to that, you have experience with it, or you know that would be your family situation, you are definitely needed. Finances, though, and we'll get to those in the next few slides. If you live in the Bay Area, you should have at least $5,000 over and above the fees you will pay to us, which I'll talk about on the next slide and why we're asking for that. If you live outside of the Bay Area, it's significantly higher. You'll need to have at least $35,000 over and above Pact fees, and we'll talk about why that is significantly higher. Home study process. So we're also kind of going in order of what everything looks like, right? That's expectant parents. That's how adoption starts, or how it becomes a conversation. Somebody's pregnant and they're not sure if they can parent. Then they're going to start looking for adoptive parents or prospective adoptive parents. How do you do that? You have to start with a home study first. At Pact, we use the Structured Analysis Family Evaluation, or SAFE. You can tap on that or Google SAFE Home Study and find it. We work with this other organization because we feel comfortable having somebody that's overseeing our work. There's somebody that we can go to if we have questions. It's somebody you can go to if you feel like you were not supported properly. Most other agencies that don't use SAFE don't have somebody like that. They're just kind of going off like a general skeleton and, oh, we're covering this sort of thing, and then you'll pass the home study. And I've worked with a family that had a home study from another agency and then came to do the SAFE home study with me. I read their home study from their other agency, and then I did their home study, and there were significantly important things that were not included in the original home study. And that's what we like about SAFE. It pulls out the questions. It gives us like an unbiased picture to check a list. Like, yep, we talked about this. We covered this. It's really great. And like I said, I saw a home study that was not safe. And then I did one, and like life expectancy, like one of the prospective adoptive parents had a life-threatening moment, not covered at all in the original home study, even though it already happened. And then I sit with them and I'm like, wait, I didn't see this in your original one. And they were like, oh yeah, it was never asked, or we didn't know to bring it up. But SAFE asks those questions. And this is only for people that live within our service area, which is basically Northern California Bay Area. All visits will occur at your home. The SAFE paperwork is 2 rounds of questionnaires and references that you fill out. And then additional forms. If you remember early on, I said this can feel really intrusive. We're going to get a lot of info from you. If you are not self-employed, your employer is also going to have to know that you're doing this process. Background information, birth certificates, marriage certificates, divorce certificates, if applicable, and even marriage, if applicable. Medical clearances, you're going to have to go to your physician. If you're parenting any kids already, they also need to be medically cleared, and we need their birth certificate and any other background info. Fingerprint clearances, that's the live scan where you go get your live scan done. I've worked with families who thought some old reports were expunged or not present, and they got pulled up. Adoption live scan tends to pull everything up. I'll talk about that on the next slide. Employment verification. So if you have an employer, you have a template, and we find out your employment status, how long you've been there, your income. Your employer is going to know you're doing this process. So also if you're somebody who's like, I just started a new job, I don't want to do that yet because of how they shouldn't and can't legally, but if they're suddenly like, oh, you're looking to adopt, we're not going to bump you up to this promotional level or whatever. Some people will wait a little bit, especially if they've started a new job. And we get your financial and tax information. So fingerprint clearances. When a live scan report brings up police records, arrests, or misdemeanors, it's not an automatic failure of the home study process. And there are obviously hits that will be an automatic failure. Anything involving children, murder, like the really intense stuff, we don't tend to work with people like that. But if there's a big obvious hit of like, we cannot entrust somebody else's child into your home and care, that will obviously be a failure. And you would not be able to engage in the home study process. There will be hits that require a waiting period of 5 to 7 years. There was somebody who called me maybe in 20 or 2021, and they were totally honest. They said, this is what happened. This is what I have. We looked it up, and it was like, you have to wait. So I think they had to wait 7 to 8 years from initial arrest record until they could pursue adoption. And then within the Bay Area, a lot of my families that have hits tend to be 10 years old or more, and they are typically marijuana possession or protesting because we're in the Bay. Weed is legalized in California. It is not an automatic fail, and we will talk to you about it. Do you still use? What is your plan? What is your process going to be when a baby comes home? That sort of thing. Or was it DUI or drug use when you were 21 and now you're 37 and you're sober, right? Like that's not an automatic fail. That's not your current lifestyle. And what have you learned from that? How has that prepared you? We're not looking for perfect families, right? A perfect family who hasn't been through anything, in my opinion, is going to crumble if there's a colicky baby or a baby that's not sleeping, right? Families who have been through some stuff, they're like, all right, I got through a near-death experience. I got through a night in jail because I protested. I got through blah, 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 blah. I can handle a colicky baby. I might still crumble, but like I've been through things. Families that are totally perfect, no bumps in the road. To be honest, it's a little more like pink flag. Are you going to be able to handle some of the complexities that come with just a baby and some of the complexities that can come with adoption? And for those of you, if you're like, ooh, I do have an arrest record, we are required to obtain copies of those police reports for any arrests aside from minor traffic violations. And that applies to if you've lived anywhere in the last 5 years, right? Oh, I lived in Florida 4 years ago and I got arrested. We're going to have to contact Florida for that report. We're also going to have to live scan you in Florida. There's a way that they do it. It's a lot. So if you know you're somebody that falls into, I've lived in multiple places in the last 5 years, or I know I have a record, this is something that you want to start preparing. ahead of time, because then it'll help this initial process of getting started. I know there's a lot on the screen, but I was trying to give like a step-by-step situation for families. On the left side is Pact service area residents, and then on the right is people who are out of area. So like specifically SoCal, LA, San Diego, that said, we don't have a social worker down there. We're not licensed for that area. So anybody who's interested in our placement program starts with that consultation pre-placement for prospective adoptive parents of color, or the BCAC, which is short term for transracial education, which I'm not going to talk too much about. But that's if you are a white family or a family of color looking to adopt across race, you have a different consult that you start with. If you are within our service area, we do your home study. It's the safe home study process, about 2 to 3 months, could be more or less, depending on how quickly you get your homework, your paperwork, all the things needed. If you're not in our area, you have your home study done by a full service licensed agency in your state. I can't give you an answer right now if you're not in our area on who to work with, but if you move forward, we talk with you about, oh, hey, we're familiar with this agency in Colorado. We know this agency in Philly. We know this agency in SoCal. We help you think about who you can work with for that. And then everybody pretty much goes along the same path. You have to do education, webinars, books, conferences. You create your Dear Expectant Parent letter, which I'll talk about at the end. You finish your home study, you have everything ready, then you go active. That 2 to 4 year start time waits, or that 2 to 4 year wait time starts. We start presenting you on our website when somebody pregnant calls us, when another agency calls us, when somebody from a hospital calls us and said, I just gave birth last night, I'd like to talk to somebody about adoption. Then if you're chosen, you enter into the match or the placement period. If that adoption moves forward to a full adoption, then you enter the post-placement period. If we did your home study, it's very likely we do your post-placement visits as well. If you live somewhere else where we don't service, then your agency will do that. And then we offer post-placement support, education, and community for you, no matter where you live, throughout the rest of your life and your child's life. And then again, if you do not work with us for placement, you can still access all the post-placement things that we offer. We typically have 12 to 15 waiting families at a time, with about 3 to 5 waiting in the wings, finishing up their stuff, finishing up their home study, their profile, that sort of thing. Right now, we only have 7. That's why we're recruiting. We get occasional calls from other adoption agencies or professionals interested in our waiting families of color specifically, because a lot of these agencies do not have families of color, or they only have 1 or 2, where if they call us, we have 7 that can also be added to the mix if they match the other criteria. We have connections to local hospitals and programs within the Bay. We've done direct on the ground, showing up at hospitals, clinics, college health centers, crisis pregnancy centers. We don't go in there being like, tell about adoption. This is adoption. We go in and say, if you're working with somebody who's considering it, thinking about it, here is our brochure. And we have a brochure called Know Your Rights, and we pass that around as well. And it breaks down the rights that pregnant people have. It tells them they can talk to 5 agencies at a time. They're not promising their kid to anybody. It lets them know that they can ask for time to sign paperwork, that sort of thing. Abortion clinics that we're connected with, we are connected with Planned Parenthood. I believe we're the only adoption agency working with Planned Parenthood right now to revamp their adoption tab on their website. We have direct connection to health centers. We know a lot of the social workers at Zuckerberg, SF Gen, and Alta Bates, where a lot of placements have tended to happen for our families. And then we've done placements from other hospitals around the Bay that have our material, know to call us if they're working with a pregnant person of color. Even some jails, typically female jail or prison, they have some of our information if they have an inmate that's pregnant or is thinking about adoption. And then All Options is a national talk line, and we are one of 6 agencies that they refer callers to. So this is nationwide. Somebody can call and say, I'm pregnant, I'd like to know all my options. I think we're like listed right at the top of their list as well. And it says Pact specifies with like they have families of color looking to adopt. I think we're the only adoption agency connected to a whole bunch of pro-choice and other adoption clinics. So with the caveat of Pact fully supports choice and termination or adoption if that's the individual's wish. And we will counsel them and educate them on adoption if they have questions. Not too many adoption agencies are connected in that way. Any questions up to that point? Ooh, and we have a few minutes. We are getting into the money piece. It is going to be a lot of information on the screen. You will get a copy of these slides so you can review it again. I'm going to move forward. So our services for pre-adoptive parents are offered on a steep sliding scale. We collect info from each family that gives us an unbiased idea of income, assets, and ability to fund an adoption. For families who lived on earned income paychecks, generally the fee will be determined by gross income. For those who have assets, including property beyond the home, cash, stocks, other investments, we look at net worth to determine where families fall on the scale. Gathering financial information is a requirement for the home study process. There have been adoptive parents, maybe once or twice at Pact before I started, and at other agencies across the country who try to lie about how much money they have. It has tended to be people that are on the higher end of our scale, don't want us to know that they're on the higher end of the scale. And part of the home study process is tax form and information, employment verification, financial info. The truth will out. Families that have tried to not tell us how much money they make, once we gather everything required, we often find out. Lying on your home study can be a fail, omitting things. There have been families in the past through Pact and through other agencies, actually, no, mostly through other agencies that have lied about things, and then their agency will not pass them on their home study. And also, this is part of your future child if you adopt story, right? So do you want to be like, oh, we started out by lying and then we were still able to adopt you? That's not a good look. That's not child-centered. Tell the truth, give all the background info on everything. Our case management fees, this is just case management, range from $1,000 to $11,000. So my highest end, families that make over $300K a year, their case management fee is $11,000. And then everybody else is in a different bracket, determined by sliding scale and divided into 3 payments. So the $11,000 is not all due up front. It's broken out into 3 different payments. Home study fees, advisement relinquishment, ICPC, post-placement, finalization, that will apply when applicable. Remember, if you don't live in our service area, the home study fee that you're going to see on the next screen does not apply to you. Advisement and relinquishment is the process when we are counseling somebody who's going to place. We have to advise them first. We review all the paperwork, let them know their rights, let them know the time frame, let them know when they can stop, when they can ask for legal representation, all sorts of things. We have to advise them first before they sign any of the relinquishment paperwork. So it's a 2-step process. ICPC is the Interstate Compact for the Protection of Children, and that is only applicable if the baby is born where you don't live. And that could even be, we live in Tahoe on the California side, and the baby was born, I think there's Tahoe on the Nevada side, or the baby was born in Reno. Even though they're literally like, hey, I can see you, that's still state lines. So ICPC would apply. If you live in San Diego and the baby's born here in the Bay Area, that's still California. So ICPC does not apply. It is only if the baby is going to have to cross state lines. And then post-placement visits and finalization. If your home study is held by Pact, we do those. If it's not, that fee will not be applicable to you on our scale. It'll be a different amount to your agency. And all adoptions will incur additional fees depending on the placement. When there's an additional agency involved, which I'll talk about, legal fees, if applicable, often families need a lawyer or want a lawyer to help with finalization. If birth father is not involved, a lawyer is needed to terminate his rights. Travel expenses, right? So if you have to cross those state lines, or even if you live in San Francisco and the baby's born in Oakland, you've got bridge, you've got whatever, like those are all fees that add up. Also track them, because the adoption tax credit and maybe your employer will give you financial reimbursement. And a lot of employers want everything. They want the mileage, the plane tickets, the whatever, you can get some of that back. The mileage postage documents for your placement, and then any expectant or birth parent expenses. If you've watched the Lifetime movies or you've Googled agencies, we are not asking you to pay for an apartment. We are not asking you to get somebody a car. When you hear that somebody needs help with rent, if you live in the Bay Area, it's not always Bay Area rent prices. It can be rent somewhere else. It can be My electricity just got turned off. I just need it covered for 1 month. And there are also plenty of expectant parents that don't need anything. They're like, no, I'm connected with everything. I'd love to get counseling post-placement. That is also a birth parent expense that you would be responsible for. But we are not the agency that's like, you have to buy an apartment, buy a car, blah, 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 blah. We don't do that. Okay, we only have a few minutes left. This is the big fee on here. You'll see the income on the left under 99K. That top line is your fees to us, and then so on as you go down. If you live within the Bay Area or within our service area, Sacramento, San Jose, I think we're also clear like all the way to go up to Humboldt or Eureka. We never have. That's our service area. So everything you see on here is your fee if it's applicable. If you do not live within our service area, only the three in the middle are going to apply to you. Case management, for sure. The other two might or might not, depending on where the baby is. So somebody who lives in Pennsylvania, your total fee to us might only be $6,000 if you're in the 120 to 149K. And then maybe we do advisement and relinquishment. So then you have the 2, and then obviously you have ICPC. So then you also have the 8. If you live in Pennsylvania and we get a call from somebody in Seattle, then you're responsible for their fees, their advisement relinquishment, their ICPC possibly. And that's why we make that note of have at least 35K or more. These are our fees. I'm just going to keep using the same example. If you're in Pennsylvania and you're in Pact's program and Seattle calls and says, the expectant parent we're working with likes the Pennsylvania family, here are our fees. They tend to be anywhere from 7,000 to 35, 55, 60,000. I've seen it all. So Pennsylvania, you have to pay for your home study agency and their fees. Then you pay Pact's case management. Then you're like, yep, we can afford the Seattle agency and their fees are 25. Then you also have to do your agency's post-placement. I hope that's making sense. That's why families that are in other states, and if you're, and you can say, nope, Katie, we live in Pennsylvania. We only want a Pact placement, or we'll only take like a Pennsylvania placement because then our agency can help support that. And we just keep it as the 2 of you. If you have the finances, because it's going to be a lot of money. Yep, we live in Pennsylvania. We're working with you in California, and whoever else calls in the country will pay what they're asking, whether it's 7,000, 35, 55, which I've seen. You set your limit, you let us know. A lot of people are like, I live in Pennsylvania, why would I work with Pact? And then also say yes to Seattle. For a lot of people, it's because they're families of color and they want to see themselves represented in the staff that works with them, the other families that they're waiting with. They like our fees as well. That makes it possible for them to explore other options. And then a lot of people come to us for our ethics and our transparency and knowing that we're not just, for lack of a better word, baby snatching or out there hunting for pregnant people. They know that the people coming to us are getting real options counseling, are not being coerced, are getting full education, are knowing their rights. And so that's why somebody in Pennsylvania is like, no, I'd rather work with you, because other agencies are already calling somebody a birth parent and they haven't even given birth. So that's why, because some people are like, why would I work with you? I live somewhere else. All those different reasons. Our fees are affordable. We are ethical, open, honest, transparent, child-centered. Everything I said in the beginning, we're trying to dismantle whiteness from adoption, that sort of thing. We also have a needed family sliding scale. This is only if you're 100K and under. If you're 250K and you're a 2-parent Black family, yes, I need you. And you don't make below 100. So you fall on that thing. If you're a 2-parent Black family and you make $95,000 a year between the 2 of you, you're a needed family and you fall onto this scale that you see. And in order to ensure that our free structure does not make it impossible for families to adopt, we've created this program. And if you fit the profile of what we're looking for. So if you're an interracial couple, you're not totally what we need right now. We need 2 Black parents, 2 Latinx parents, 2 Asian parents. We don't really need interracial families, so we wouldn't really drop you into this scale. We'd put you at this one at the under 99 and across the board. But if you fall into the ones we're specifically recruiting, like we had on the other slide, you fall into this. I might skip through this a little quickly because I really only have 4 minutes. So if there are any last questions coming up, please drop them in. Placement program only. Pre-placement consultation with us is $400. If you're looking into transracial adoption, it's $500 and a different process. To become a client in an active waiting family, that sliding scale, you either fall 1K to 11,000. Right now, the majority of my families fall in the 5,200 to 8,500 range. A home study agency that is not us, you'll be seeing ranges for 2,000 to 3,500. Some are still around 15 to 1,700. Post-placement for somebody that is not us, each visit can be anywhere from 500 to 700 each, anywhere from 2 to 4 visits. ICPC, if applicable, can range from 1,000 to 5,000, depending on your agency. And then the overall budget above and beyond our case management fees. So those of you that live in the Bay and you fall in our range, it's very likely that you'll have kind of like a Bay Area adoption placement. You can stick to that. If you're open to other agencies that might call us, that's where we say have 5,000, but there are agencies that are asking for 25,000. So you would also want to likely have that. For those of you that are out of area, you definitely are going to want to have more or are going to need to have more to be seriously considered, unfortunately. The expectant birth parent agency, so that Seattle agency that I talked about, or a Connecticut agency that calls us, their range can be 10 to 40 or plus, like I talked about. Travel can range to 2,000 plus. Expectant birth parent expenses can be 0 to 3 within Pact. We ask you for an escrow of 3,000 that we hold, and that's where we pull for prenatal vitamins, a prenatal visit, an electric bill, a pay-as-you-go cell phone, therapy services. Other agencies, and you'll see as you look around and find more, are giving birth parents $22,000 after placement. We don't know where that money goes. We don't know why it's not given for family preservation. I mean, we do, but I'll let you look at that up yourself. So there are other agencies that you'll look around and they're going to tell you, oh no, you need at least $25,000 to support the birth parent after they place, even though that money could probably be used for family preservation work. And then lawyer TPR finalization, that can range from 2,000 something up to 5,000, maybe sometimes more. So you need to be ready for tax fees. And if you just work with us, a few thousand more. Pact and other people, or you don't work at Pact at all and you're calling other agencies in the country, other agencies typically will start you at 15 or 20, 25,000, and just it kind of keeps moving up. I'm going to keep going, but any last questions, please drop them in. I just have a few more slides that I want to make sure we cover and that you can think about. And also, if you do need to hop off, this has been recorded and can be sent to you and will also be dropped on our YouTube channel and connected on our website. So things to consider: what is bringing you to adoption at this time? Have you really grieved and processed any fertility issues, if that is applicable? Adoption is not a straight line. It is not A, B, C, D, E. It is not a cute little bow tie on top of your little cake. It is more like XL, hashtag poop emoji, Texas, R cute, like all over the place. Can you be flexible? Can you move quickly? Can you be a yes family? Yes, Katie, present us. Yes, Katie, we're ready to go. Yes, Pact, we're ready to go. Can you also sit and wait? Can you sit and wait and have the unknown of, oh my gosh, we're never going to get chosen. This is getting really hard. Can you sit and wait? Your child comes first. This is not about you anymore. Like I said, do you want to start their journey by lying in your home study? Or do you want to start it by being totally open, honest, clear, and transparent? And will you be okay? Will you be okay if you can't or do not adopt? We strongly believe if you stay within our program and you because a lot of people say, I'm never going to get chosen. How am I never going to get chosen? In the 10 years that I've been here, the families who have stuck with this program have all adopted a child or two. The families that a year was too long. I've had families that stop after a year because it's just way too long. I've had families that get pregnant. I've had families that say family health is more important right now. We're going to stop. If they had continued, especially the people that say the wait is too long, if they had continued, I think they would be chosen. I have a couple of families I can think about in the last 10 years who stopped this process. And I'm like, Ooh, one of them was a white family. If they had stuck it out just a few more months, they would have been seriously considered by the two white birth parents that we supported. But they literally stopped like 2 months before the first white baby was born. And then the next white baby was a few months after that. So can you sit and wait? Will you be okay if you can't or do not adopt? We invite you to envision yourselves as parents. Imagine that your child is watching the choices you are making in this process from start to finish. Try to imagine your child as an adult, we do grow up, and how they might feel about your choices down the road. All of this is part of their story. I have worked with adult adoptees, young adoptees, like I said, for years. Once they find out, they're like, wait, what's in my home study? Wait, what did my profile book look like? Wait, were my parents at the hospital? Once they start talking, meeting other adoptees, knowing this, they are going to come back to you and want to know their entire story on how they joined your family. Becoming a parent, yes, we know, is about you. Being a parent is about your child, and your journey is just beginning. If our placement program does not feel like the right fit for you, as I keep saying, you can still access everything else that we offer. If we're in the Bay Area and only work with Pact, which fee columns apply? Let me jump back real quick on that before I get to the last. Bay Area only with us, all of these, because we can do your home study, your case management will apply, your advisement relinquishment will apply, your ICPC will not. That's also if you're Bay Area and the baby is born in the Bay Area. ICPC is the only one that you don't have to worry about. Because again, baby's not crossing state lines. You live in Berkeley, baby was born in Berkeley, we don't have to cross state lines. So if you're a Bay Area, everything on this screen except the ICPC, if we handle everything. If you're Bay Area and an agency in San Diego calls us, we're working with an agency right now in San Diego, their fees are ranging from like $6,500 to $10,000 above and beyond this. Most of my families can afford that. Some of my families can't. And if that doesn't make sense, you can email me directly and I can go over it, and I'll drop my email in at the end. Excuse me. So really quick, the Dear Expectant Parent letter example. Do not do this on your own. Please don't create one and then send it to me, because I guarantee you I'm going to have to edit it. There are specifics that we ask you. We walk you through this process. We tell you what expectant parents are looking for. Quickly, if you're parenting a kid already, they should only be a snippet of your profile. It should not highlight them entirely. We talk about the right language to use. We talk about the different areas to cover. We will guide you and walk you through this. We have a webinar about it. You can also go on our website right now and look at all of our families that are waiting. You can go on other agencies across the country and look at their families. You'll see the difference in profiles and what they look like. But we walk you through this. It's a letter profile. Really, page 1 is kind of a letter. Thank you for learning about us. We're open to open adoption. We have some of this. And then the rest of the book is like, meet us. This is our family. This is our community. This is how we will talk about adoption. This will be childcare. This is how we address race and diversity. These are snippets of our home. These are our pets. This is where we travel, that sort of thing. You're giving them a glimpse into your life. And like I said, you can go look on our website right now, or any other agency. That is really it. Any final questions? I know we went a few minutes over. Let me drop my email into the chat. I am the main point of contact for any prospective adoptive parents that are looking to work with Pact. So I am who you will be connecting with. First name, Katie, Katie, at pactadopt.org. Reminder that this will be recorded and on our website, and I believe sent to you by my ed coordinator. Next steps if we're interested in moving forward. So email me or go onto our website. But actually the easiest thing is to just email me. Your next step for anybody, no matter where you live, is one of our pre-placement consultations. It is paperwork that I send to you. If you are a 2-parent family, you do not do the paperwork together. You do not do the paperwork for each other. Sarah cannot do Sarah's paperwork and Tiffany's paperwork. No, we usually can tell when one parent, if you're a 2-parent family, has done it for the both of you. The most ideal and the most honest is that if you're a 2-parent family, you each do it totally independent of each other and then come back together and talk about it. That personally is my favorite, because then a lot of parents are like, or families are like, oh my gosh, we totally had this great conversation because we responded differently. If you're a single parent, it's just you. And I know you can skip all the sections that talk about relationship. So you do a pre-placement consultation. That's the paperwork. The fee is $400. It's non-refundable because services are rendered. You email that to me. So the best thing to do is email me first and I'll send it to you and then we'll be connected. Then you send it in. I connect you with one of my pre-placement consultants. We have 3. They are all Black individuals. 2 of them are adoptive parents. 1 is the same race Black adoptee. So all 3 are direct members of the constellation and have direct experience. They talk with you. Some of them disclose parts of their personal journey. They just get a sense of like where you are. Then that comes back to me and I submit a letter back to you saying areas of strength, areas of possible challenge, homework and next steps, and then you move forward to the home study either with us or with an agency in your area. You're welcome. So yeah, if this family moves forward, they're in North Carolina, they still have to do my pre-placement and then they'll connect with an agency in North Carolina. If you live in Berkeley, you do our pre-placement and then Pact comes in, again, me, I come in and do your home study unless we're super overwhelmed, and then my coworker Susan will do your home study. Our website it's new. We launched it at the end of last year, pactadopt.org. It has a whole bunch of more information on there, all of our programs, our placement team, our consultants, so you can see who the consultants are that might be working with you. Our event calendar, we keep it super up to date. We have webinars every month. We have support calls. If you're somebody on here and you're like, oh my gosh, my friend is a Black parent who adopted and they don't know about you, they can come to our program. If you're somebody on here, oh my gosh, my friend is an adoptee of color, they don't know about you, they can come to my support group. It's available to anyone. You are very welcome. Any last questions, I can remain on. Otherwise, Katie at pactadopt.org is the best way to reach me, and I'll be able to connect with you that way. Thank you again for your time. Good luck on this journey. If you connect with Pact, I will see you again. If you adopt through somebody else, I hope I'll see you again through some of our post-placement experiences.